Hello everyone, this is Ralph from Ralph's Trucking. Got some bad news. There was some testimony at the U.S. House of Surface Transportation Committee I missed last month. It's going to be some bad news for all of us across the country. Great testimony. In the video, I'll show a clip of his testimony. It is the CEO of Pilot Flying J, Shamek Kanar, I believe his name is pronounced. If I'm killing it, I'm sorry. But he has some great testimony about the Union Pacific and what's happening, moving fuels across the nation. So, if you don't know who I am, I'm Ralph. I'm a truck driver, as you can see. I drive for Tyson Foods. Been driving for 22 years. I'm a company driver, always been. Never been an owner-operator. But right now, we're in a fuel crunch. And here is the intro. Okay, April 27, 2022, the CEO of Pilot Flying J, Shamek Kanar, Mr. Kanar, testified in the U.S. House Surface Transportation Committee about the Union Pacific and things they're doing to slow the fuel across the nation. Now, like I said, I screen recorded some of this, and I'm going to let you hear from him directly. And afterwards, I'm going to give you some highlights of what he said. So, go ahead. Let's listen to the testimony and beware. Make sure your ears are open and listen.
Hearing. So, Chairman Oberman, members of the Surface Transportation Board, thank you for inviting me to testify today. My name is Shamek Kanar. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for Pilot Flying J. We operate the largest network of travel centers in the United States, serving the U.S. trucking industry and four-wheel customers. We currently account for approximately 20% of the country's highway, or as we call it, over-the-road diesel supply, 20%, as well as 30% of the diesel exhaust fluid supply, also known as DEF. Similar to my colleagues here, Pilot is facing a threat of severe reduction in rail service allocations. For Pilot, the service reduction allocations are being imposed by the Union Pacific Railroad. On April 13th, we were informed by the Union Pacific that we were required to reduce shipments by 26%. In subsequent conversations, we were asked to reduce them even further by 50% or face embargoes. We're not aware of any other company being instructed by the Union Pacific or any other railroad to reduce their shipments to the extent they're asking Pilot. We understand through conversations with the Union Pacific that its allocations are based on a simplistic approach of looking at those shippers who have increased their number of shipments between January 2022 and March 2022. This does not take into account the overall number of shipments received at Pilot's facilities, which, by the way, have remained static over this period. We believe the Union Pacific's approach does not fairly and proportionately allocate the supply issues, because Pilot has not increased the total number of cars it's received every month since January. What's actually happened is Pilot has become a shipper on for some cars that we were not shippers before. So our facilities are still receiving the same number of cars. It's just the name of who's shipping has changed because we've taken control over some of the cars because of the issues we've had with the railroads, so that we have the optionality to deliver these cars in markets that they can take, right? So the total number of cars has stayed the same. We understand and appreciate that the current market conditions are imposing significant constraints on the railroads, and we're committed to help ease this congestion. However, 26 to 50% reduction in our allocations will have substantial consequences for the markets. I would like to take this opportunity to take you through a few of the consequences that Union Pacific's mandate will have on the supply chain, the availability of fuel, and fuel prices. First, let me talk about the DEF supply chain. And just as a reminder, we supply about 30% of the DEF in the United States. The trucking sector is dependent on DEF. All trucks manufactured after 2010 cannot operate without DEF. And Pilot operates, if not the largest, one of the largest DEF supply networks in the country. We have 23 rail-served DEF facilities that make the DEF, and we have 18 rail transloaders. Of the 300 plus million gallons of DEF that Pilot supplies to the industry every year, 74% is moved via rail. Union Pacific's restrictions will prevent Pilot from keeping many markets adequately supplied with DEF, likely causing shortages that'll sideline trucks and reduce trucking capacity. Let me give you some context. A single rail car carries 21,500 gallons of DEF on average, okay? A single truck generally takes in 7 gallons of DEF every time they fill. This is based on our data. So that implies that a single rail car is basically providing 3,000 trucks worth of DEF fills. For some more context, basically every rail car that gets missed in terms of DEF delivery will reduce trucking potential by 5 million miles. All right? That's a really big number, 5 million miles, because you've got 3,000 fills and DEF blends with diesel at a ratio of 2.7% for 100 gallons. All right. So 2.7 gallons of DEF allow a truck to drive to use 100 gallons. Furthermore, a reduction in freight transported by the UP will only add additional pressure on the trucking sector in general. The railways are pulling back. We got to move the stuff on trucks. If we can't supply DEF, there's more pressure on the sector, and we let the sector down. Second, fuel availability and pricing. Let me begin with diesel. U.S. diesel inventories today are running 10 to 15% below what they have been in the last 5 years at their lowest point. So if you take the minimum diesel inventory over the last 5 years, today we're 10 to 15% below that number. Certain markets like the Northeast, the West, and the Southwest are even in a worse shape than the rest of the country. Renewable fuels like biodiesel, renewable diesel move exclusively on rail, on ships, or on trucks, and there are no pipeline alternatives. Certain states like California are heavily dependent on the imports of renewable fuels that are generally transported on rail. Fourth, over 50% of Pilot's renewable diesel is transported on rail, and having our capacity cut by 50% would actually increase fuel prices in these states and potentially run out some of these locations. Let me now address the challenge with gasoline. In order for gasoline to meet the octane requirements required by engines 87 to 93 octane, you have to blend gasoline with ethanol to get to that level of octane so that you could use it in a car. Ethanol, like bio and renewable diesel, basically moves on trucks, ships, or rail. In certain markets like parts of Arizona, Nevada, Pilot, in partnership with Union Pacific, has actually developed ethanol unloading facilities, and we serve majority of these markets. Cutting Pilot's ability to ship ethanol from its plant in Nebraska to these markets by 50% will substantially reduce the amount of gasoline available in these markets because we can't blend the ethanol into the gasoline, and would result in a further increase in prices during times when gasoline prices are up 48% since April 2021. To summarize, we believe UP's allocation logic is flawed, it's disproportionate, and unprecedented. If implemented, it'll have three impacts. There'll be a significant impact on DEF supply, potentially stranding a large number of trucks, a negative impact on diesel and gasoline supply and prices in an already challenged market, and it'll hurt our supply chain during times that we cannot afford it. On behalf of Pilot, our 70,000 trucking fleet customers, and the million customers that we
Here is the DEF tank. And right here is my diesel tank. got 2 diesel tanks, one on each side, 1 DEF tank. Just to give you some highlights of each. Okay. Like he said, all trucks 2010 and newer have to have DEF. A lot of farm machinery has to run DEF, anything new. And over, I think it's 80 or 90 horsepower. But some highlights he mentioned. This testimony was April 27, 2022. I'm just now catching on to it. 74% of DEF is transported by rail. One rail car is 21,500 gallons, which is right at 3,000 semi-trucks. Hear that? 3,000 semi-trucks. One rail car is about 5 million miles. 5 million miles per rail car. And they're reducing the rail cars. Another thing he would mention, I didn't know this. All renewable fuel, biofuels, from soybeans, which is for diesel, corn for gas. All of it has to be transported by train, truck, or boat. A lot of states require so much biofuel in their regular fuel to be mixed. Some states it's like 10%, B10, you know, it all depends on state with how much biofuel you have to have. So, if they're reducing how much they can be moved on the rail car, I personally have to fill that DEF tank up about every 2 tanks, maybe 3. But 2 tanks, I usually get about 10 to 12 gallons, which is right around 12 to 1,400 miles. Say 8 gallons. Do the math. If you're not worried about the fuel situation right now, you need to be. All biofuels are transported by train, truck, or barge, boat, whatever. One rail car is 21,500 gallons, give or take, he said, which is 3,000 semi-trucks. Yeah. A lot of people call diesel fuel government juice. It is not just for semi-trucks. My little Volkswagen Jetta is diesel. I had to put DEF in it. I usually have to fill up that tank once on a 10,000 mile, 9 to 10,000 mile oil change. Once between oil change. They top it off during the oil change, and I have to usually top it off between the 2. So I'm getting right at 4 to 6,000 miles on a tank, which I think that tank holds like 7 gallons. This one here, I'm not exactly sure what's holding a semi-truck, but I do a lot more miles in a truck. Farm machinery, they run DEF. Anything new, I think 2010 or whatever, and also horsepower. So a lot of things, pickup trucks, they take DEF. My Volkswagen Jetta takes DEF. So if you're not worried about the fuel situation right now, like I said, many states require so much biofuel. Corn for gasoline, soybeans for diesel, biofuel. Yeah, be worried. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, leave them below. I hope this gives you a little heads up. It's not looking good. I'll talk to you next time if I find any more information. Like I said, somebody just told me about this video and I had to find it and I shared it. You can Google it and find, listen to his whole testimony and questions and answers. I just did his opening statement. Thank you. I'll catch you next time. If you're new, hit that subscribe button. Hit that thumb up. It helps the channel. And I'll talk to you next time. Man, I'm starting to turn gray. Like I said, I just showed you a receipt also in that video where I pumped over 8 gallons of DEF in this truck. It was a little under half a tank. Like I said, every 2 tanks, I filled this DEF up. I don't like to get too low. I didn't know there was going to be a shortage of DEF. shortage of diesel in a lot of areas. It's getting harder and harder. I'm not just saying this because the sky's falling. There's even testimony right there I just showed you. You can Google it for yourself. Pilot Flying J testimony to Congress. It should pop up. April 27th, 2022 is when that testimony is done. Like I said, if you would, hit that thumb up. Please hit that subscribe button. And if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, or what you'd like to hear me talk about next, leave comments below. Thank you so much.